The Valley of Fallen Gods had never known wind. At least that was what people said. But when Ta Han Fong set foot in the valley, the air trembled like the surface of water struck by a stone. Before him rose mountains thrust straight into the sky, sharp, cold, and so perfect they could not have been shaped by nature. Chu Lak Dao narrowed his eyes at the distant range. "Do you see it?" Diapeng Wai stepped onto a high boulder, her pupils tightening. One cliff ahead, curved with a distinct blade edge and thick spine, it wasn't a mountain. It was a colossal battle axe. Farther away, a ridge of black stone stood upright like the spine of a sword. Other peaks bore the shapes of spears, halberds, sabers, all as if someone had driven them into the earth after a world-shattering war. Ta Han Fong crouched and pressed his hand against the cracked ground. A thin current of spiritual energy was flowing. Not spreading but being drawn away. The earth trembled faintly. Not an earthquake. Something beneath the valley floor was awakening. Diapeng Wai whispered, her voice trembling. "If this is a battlefield, then what kind of being fought here?" And at that very moment a faint sound like a single drop of water falling echoed through the deathly stillness. The dripping sound did not fade. It repeated. Slow. Steady. Like a countdown. Ta Han Fong lifted his gaze to the murky gray sky above the Valley of Fallen Gods and said quietly, "It's not wind. And it's not water. It's spiritual energy." Chu Lak Dao immediately circulated his cultivation to probe the surroundings. His expression shifted. The spiritual energy in the valley was not dispersing. Naturally, it was being pulled toward a single central point, the deepest part of the land encircled by those weapon-turned mountains. "There's a grand formation," he said in a low voice. "And it's still active." Diapeng Wai frowned. Active for how many years? Who could possibly maintain something like this? A dangerous light flickered in Ta Han Fong's eyes as he replied softly, "If those mountains truly are weapons, then someone who surpassed even a martial emperor once existed here." The air suddenly grew heavy. Chu Lak Dao looked at him warily. "You know too much." Without another word he flicked his hand and formed a seal. A golden talismanic mark slipped silently into Ta Han Fong's body. "Just a tracking seal," he said coldly. "To make sure you're not leading us into a trap." Ta Han Fong did not resist. He simply stared toward the center of the valley where spiritual energy churned like an invisible gateway. "If you want them to continue forward, comment 1. The three of them advanced toward the center of the valley, where spiritual energy spiraled inward like an invisible eye opening in the earth. The closer they got, the clearer the razor-sharp details of the weapon mountains became. Ta Han Fong stopped before a massive block of black stone and pressed his hand against its icy surface. Veins ran along the length of it, identical to ancient weapon-forging inscriptions. "It's not a mountain," he murmured. "It's a structure turned to stone." Chu Lak Dao didn't hesitate. His blade flashed one precise strike, cleaved into the mountain's flank. The stone split apart with a thunderous crack, dust billowing into the air. Beneath a shell tens of thousands of years thick, a hollow space was revealed. Inside was a staircase descending into the earth. A wave of deathly aura breathed outward, cold and suffocating. Diapeng Wai shivered faintly but stepped forward anyway. If the grand formation is still active, then the source drawing in the spiritual energy must be below. No one spoke after that. They descended step by step, the light behind them shrinking into a thin sliver. At the bottom of the staircase, silhouettes emerged from the darkness. Rows of corpses knelt in place, hands forming seals, heads bowed as if in prayer. There were no signs of battle. No signs of resistance. Only the silence of a ritual that had failed. The kneeling corpses had not completely decayed. Before each body, dark dried streaks of blood stretched across the ground, forming an ancient ritual array. Ta Han Fong crouched to examine it, his heartbeat slowing. "They weren't killed," he said quietly. "They offered themselves as sacrifices." Chu Lak Dao was about to respond when the sound came again. Drip. Drip. All three of them looked up at once. High above, in the dense darkness of the grand hall's vaulted ceiling, a massive black cocoon hung suspended in midair. Thick, dark green liquid dripped from its base, releasing a cold metallic stench. At that exact moment, the spiritual energy from the entire valley surged into the hall like a flooding river. The cocoon trembled. Cracked. A fissure split open, and from within tens of thousands of tiny creatures crawled out, their metallic shells gleaming, their thin wings vibrating with a horrifying buzz. Diapeng Wai shouted, flames erupting outward and igniting the air itself. But amid the sea of fire and insects, a colossal shadow slowly descended. Its body curved like the spine of a blade. Its edge shimmered with razor light. A frigid metallic aura radiated from it. It did not roar. It formed hand seals. Ta Han Fong felt the blood in his veins turn cold. "It's not a demonic beast," he whispered. "It's a profound weapon that has given birth to life." The moment Ta Han Fong finished speaking, the creature moved. Its blade-like body suddenly elongated. Segments of metallic armor unfolded joint by joint, revealing a cold, gleaming edge beneath. The air around it trembled as if being torn apart. Chu Lak Dao roared, his saber aura erupting outward. A single slash carrying Imperial might split through the Grand Hall, striking the body of the living profound weapon head-on. Boom! The hall shook violently, cracks racing across the stone ceiling. But when the dust settled, it was still standing, without a single scratch. Diep Hung Wai clenched her teeth. Yellow Spring's flame surged forth like hellfire, engulfing the metallic body in a roaring inferno. The temperature spiked, space itself warping from the heat. The shriek of grinding metal rang out within the flames. Then from inside the sea of fire, a colossal blade cleaved downward. Chu Lok Dao barely managed to raise his saber to block. The explosion that followed shook the soul. He was sent flying, crashing hard against the stone wall, blood spilling from the corner of his mouth. His defensive barrier shattered. Tens of thousands of iron-armored insects began surging toward them like a rising tide. Ta Han Fong felt something even more terrifying than its overwhelming strength. It was learning. With every clash, its aura grew more stable. It wasn't merely alive. It was evolving. The living profound weapon did not pause. After the collision, its blade-like body vibrated with a deep resonant hum, as if recalibrating its combat rhythm. The metallic edge shifted this time, sweeping horizontally, instead of striking downward. Chu Lok Dao had not even regained his footing before the saber aura struck him again. His protective true chi shattered. He dropped to one knee, slamming his saber into the stone floor to keep himself from collapsing entirely. Diep Hung Wai poured every last thread of spiritual power she had left into the attack. The Yellow Spring's flame erupted more violently than ever before. Yet this time, the infernal fire merely skimmed across its armored surface, leaving behind a faint red mark before fading into nothing. The creature gave a slight tremor as if acknowledging the strike. Then it opened its mouth. A massive vortex of spiritual energy formed instantly. The spiritual power within the hall, even the remnants of the flames, was sucked backward into its body. At the same time, a dry cracking sound echoed from outside. The grand formation that had endured for tens of thousands of years began to collapse. Ta Han Fong felt the tracking seal inside his body suddenly flare with searing heat, the backlash tearing through his meridians in waves of pain. He dropped to the ground, his vision blurring. Chu Lok Dao was gravely wounded. Diep Hung Wai was completely spent. The grand formation was disintegrating, and the living profound weapon slowly raised its blade high, its aura locking onto all three of them. The final strike was about to fall. The colossal blade hung suspended in the air, killing intent so dense it felt as if space itself had stopped breathing. In that instant, Ta Han Fong no longer saw life or death. He saw the formation beneath the kneeling corpses. Sacrifice. Supplication. Offering spiritual power in exchange for strength from something beyond. And what answered them was this profound weapon. It's not that it's strong, he gasped, blood at the corner of his lips. It's that we're still feeding it. Every strike they unleashed, every surge of spiritual power had become fuel for its evolution. Chu Lok Dao clenched his fist, but he no longer had the strength to argue. Ta Han Fong closed his eyes and drew back the chaotic true chi within him. Instead of resisting the backlash of the tracking seal, he guided it willingly, gathering it into his dantian. He abandoned the intent to defeat it. Instead, he sent out a single stream of pure thought, no spiritual power, no killing intent, only will. The profound weapon faltered midair. The blade trembled faintly. Deep within the metallic shell, a vague fluctuation stirred like a lost echo answering a distant call. It was not a monster. It was merely a weapon without a master, born from misguided ambition. And the lesson of the past was this: borrowed power always demands the highest price. The blade stopped. For a single fleeting moment, but it was enough to change everything. Ta Han Fong opened his eyes. The panic was gone, replaced by a terrifying calm. He stepped forward even as the razor-sharp aura remained locked on his throat. "You have no master," he said softly. "You were born only to serve ambition." The current of pure will continued to spread without killing intent, without spiritual power. There was no longer any energy for the profound weapon to devour. Chu Lok Dao understood first. Struggling to his feet, he withdrew all imperial aura and ceased his attacks. Diep Hung Wai clenched her teeth and forced the flames in her palm to extinguish. The grand hall fell into silence. The profound weapon trembled violently as if starved of sustenance. Plates of metallic armor split apart piece by piece. The light within its core dimmed. At last it shrank, falling onto the stone floor as a fragment of dull silver steel no longer carrying the aura of life. Outside, the grand formation collapsed completely. Daylight poured down the stone staircase. Chu Lok Dao looked at Ta Han Fong with eyes utterly different from before. Diep Hung Wai stood silent, her arrogance gone. Ta Han Fong picked up the broken blade fragment and said quietly, "The mistake of those before us wasn't that they were weak, but that they forgot true power must come from within." Yet deep beneath the earth, a faint tremor echoed once more. If you want to uncover what awaits within the second seal, comment 1.